Deontay Wilder and his recent comments suggest that he is ready to make a comeback in the near future. Now, let's look at Deontay Wilder's comments and let's discuss why, in my opinion, this is good for boxing. So, Deontay Wilder said, I can't stop right here. I must continue my journey. I have to. I have to. Deontay Wilder said this after the recent unveiling of his statue in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Now, the unveiling of this statue may have actually encouraged Deontay Wilder to the point where he thought to himself, wow, even though I lost to Tyson Fury, look at what I have achieved. Look at the people who respect me and look up to me and how much love I've got from the people in Alabama. And it just probably has pushed him to think, you know what, let me continue with my boxing career. So it's good to see that Deontay Wilder is encouraged and that he wants to have another bite at the cherry. Because remember, once upon a time, Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder was the biggest fight in boxing, particularly when they were both world champions and they were both undefeated. And if that fight were to happen today or tomorrow, it would probably be the biggest fight in boxing because of their styles. Now, I feel like for the other heavyweights, this is a very, very bad thing because the other heavyweights, probably bar from Usyk, don't really have the upper body movement and the conditioning that a Tyson Fury has. That means most of those guys are very hittable. They have a very upright posture, and they're just not fluid. And Deontay Wilder loves those type of opponents. Those type of opponents who don't move their head, who don't move their upper body, who are, who don't have the best feet. Deontay Wilder can knock their heads off their shoulders. This guy is such a ferocious puncher. And we've seen it in his fights against, both fights against Luis Ortiz, his knockout against Bermane Stiverne, against that, what's that guy's name? That Spilker guy, I think his name was. These were brutal knockouts from Deontay Wilder where he demonstrated his, people call it, say, oh, he's a big puncher. It's not just necessarily how physically strong Deontay Wilder is, because I do believe there are heavyweights who are physically stronger. I'm sure there are heavyweights who are physically stronger, but it's about the speed, because we know that power concerns a person's speed and weight. And we know that Deontay Wilder isn't the biggest guy, and he isn't necessarily just, he's not necessarily a heavyweight, which is, I did not word that very well, but he doesn't weigh a lot in comparison to the other heavyweights, but he has a lot more speed. I've seen some people who've said that Deontay Wilder coming in heavy in the two Tyson Fury fights was counterproductive, that he was actually better when he was lighter. And although you could argue that, Tyson Fury did change his style dramatically from the first fight. If you compare it to the second and third fight, he was much more aggressive in the second and third fight in comparison to the first fight. So I don't think that is necessarily the best argument. But, Deontay Wilder was definitely more conditioned, but the pace of the fight probably wasn't as intense as the second and third fight. And I also think another reason for Deontay Wilder adding that muscle in the second and the third fight is because Deontay Wilder has a tendency to break his arms a lot. His arms, his forearms. We've seen him, talk about injuries in the past. He's injured his arms quite frequently. And you often see when athletes injure an area, they just always tend to add lean muscle tissue to almost protect the bone and remodel the bone and improve the bone density by, lifting heavy weights. Even though it's not recommended for boxers to lift super duper heavy weights, it's just often a thing you see in sports where an athlete injures a certain, muscle group, or they injure a bone and they just tend to add muscle tissue to that area just to kind of act as a barrier and to improve their bone density around that area. So yeah, this is definitely not good for all the other heavyweights out there because it's going to be such a tough fight. Deontay Wilder is a person who will never quit. He is going in there and he has the absolute heart of a lion. If you compare the way Deontay Wilder lost to the way other boxers lose, Deontay Wilder was willing to get knocked out, and you often don't see that. And maybe that's not good. Maybe Wilder needs, saving from himself. Maybe, it's not worth it. But at the end of the day, you have to give this guy credit where credit's due because he comes there to fight. And although we have seen that he is limited and he can't do certain things, if he only has one trick, it's a hell of a trick. And that right hand, even in the third fight against Tyson Fury, he was able to land it. And he actually landed it a few times in the second fight. And you just thought to yourself, wow, if he really hit through Tyson Fury, he could have knocked him out cold, because Tyson Fury was able, because he couldn't block every punch in the second fight, but there were instances where Wilder was able to land a right hand, but Tyson Fury would just take that step back, so it would take the sting out of the right hand. But you could just see Tyson Fury's, head wobble a lot and his body move. Those were big punches we seen from Deontay Wilder. So even an elusive Tyson Fury on his top form in the second fight, Wilder was able to do certain good things in that fight that suggested that he could probably beat any other heavyweight currently, by a knockout. So we don't know. We need to see Wilder against other top guys, because he's only really fought, Tyson Fury 3 times. We're sick of that fight. And he's fought Ortiz, who was a decent level guy, but we need to see Wilder against different type of heavyweights. We need to see him fight a Usyk and Anthony Joshua. I don't think he should fight Dillian Whyte, because I think it's just such a dangerous fight for Dillian Whyte. And Wilder is a dangerous opponent for anyone, yet alone Dillian Whyte. But I just think that Dillian Whyte fight in particular is way, way too dangerous for him to take, because Dillian Whyte is a plotter. He doesn't have good footwork. He's not very good and sophisticated on getting in the inside, as we saw against the Tyson Fury fight. So how is he going to cope with someone who is longer and who hits a lot harder than Tyson Fury, especially when he's got his range? If he's able to detonate that right hand on what we know is a declining chin and punch resistance of Dillian Whyte, wow, it could be night-night. So it's good that Wilder says that he wants to return back to boxing. Yeah, and good luck to him. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please like, subscribe. Peace.